Welcome into Off the Hook Sports. I am Caleb Calhoun. Dave, I told you guys he had a doctor's appointment yesterday. He is actually ill today. Just please keep him in your thoughts. Hope to have him back Monday. So I'm going to be riding solo again with you guys today. Thanks for joining me live from the Ted Russell studio, the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. We got a monster show today. The show brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. We're going to talk a lot about Tennessee football's SEC championship odds. Also, did Tennessee football spend more on a 2025 recruit than anybody else in college football? There's a report that they may have. Going to the hardwood, the Lady Vols get the biggest win for the women's basketball program since their 2008 national title, bar none, beating UConn. It was a huge win. The electricity is back with the Lady Vols program. Everybody's loving it. We obviously have to talk about that. We're going to talk about a little bit about the men's basketball program as they also are still rolling. They are going to play Oklahoma over the weekend. And then we're going to close with some larger stories because SEC revenue is actually down from 2022-23 to 2023-24. Now, this is before this past year, which hasn't been reported yet because this past year won't be reported until this time next year. It goes through August 31st. But and that'll go up because of the ESPN deals. But the revenue being down is a bit alarming, particularly as Greg Sankey's salary went up significantly at the same time. We're going to talk a little bit about that. You guys know I'm not the biggest Greg Sankey fan. And also, some big changes are coming to college football. We hear that all the time, but there are reports of power conferences. Basically, let's just say taking over to control athlete pay. So we have a ton to discuss, a ton to get to, a lot of things to cover. Let's go ahead and get rolling with today's tough question, which is brought to you by Banks & Jones, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. Again, live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. Today's tough question brought to you by Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations, your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chatwith2tsmortgage.com. That's chatwith2tsmortgage.com. Today's tough question is this. Tennessee football has been given the tied for the third best odds to win the SEC championship. Is that too high? Is that too low? Or is that just right? We're going to roll in and talk about that right now. Tennessee's SEC title odds, we're going to talk about right now. According to FanDuel, Tennessee is at a plus 700 to win the SEC. That's tied with Alabama for third. Ahead of them are Georgia at plus 390 and Texas at plus 210. Now, I have no real problem with the SEC title odds, Tennessee being tied for third. I really don't have a problem with them being tied with Alabama for third, largely because I've told you guys how much I believe in Kalen DeBoer long term. He's got his coach. He's got his quarterback now. He's going to have his quarterback. He has his offensive coordinator back with him. He's got a lot of things working in his favor. So there's a big reason to believe in Kalen DeBoer. My issue with this report, with these odds, is this. How in the world can Tennessee's SEC title odds, and this is an honest question now, how in the world can Tennessee's SEC title odds be tied for third with Alabama, but their win totals on FanDuel are tied with Georgia and Texas for number one? So in case you guys don't understand what I'm saying, Tennessee, their win total is set at 9.5, the same number as Georgia and the same number as Texas. Alabama's is set at 8.5. That's tied for first with Tennessee. Alabama's second, tied for fourth, actually, with LSU, both at 8.5. How could Vegas sit there and say Tennessee's projected to win one more full game than Alabama. But at the same time, Alabama and Tennessee have the exact same odds to win the SEC title. Furthermore, how can you say Tennessee's odds to win the SEC title are at plus 700? And how could you have Georgia so much higher at plus 390 and Texas so much higher at plus 210 when you're sitting there, if you're Vegas, saying that Tennessee, you're projecting them to win the exact same number of games as Georgia and Texas? This doesn't make any sense. Now, obviously, where this comes in is you're going to say schedule strength, non-conference schedules. Maybe one of them plays a tougher non-conference slate. Well, let's break that down. Tennessee plays Syracuse in non-conference play. Alabama plays at Florida State and Wisconsin at home. Anybody who watched Florida State last year think Alabama's going to lose that game at Florida State? Yes, they played two Power 5 games or two Power 4 games with Wisconsin at home too. But who really thinks they have a legitimate chance to lose either of those games? I don't. I honestly don't. What about Georgia? Georgia's non-conference schedule is Marshall, Austin Peay, Charlotte, and Georgia Tech. How could you look at that and say that their non-conference schedule gives them the same win total as Tennessee? No, it's going to be based on the conference win total. Guys, the reason I'm bringing this up is conference win total is going to determine the SEC champion and who plays for it in this totally imbalanced scheduling of the SEC that's so ridiculous. How in the world could you say Georgia has such greater odds if you think they're going to win the same number of games, particularly when Tennessee at least has a much tougher non-conference game in Syracuse? That doesn't make sense. Let me go to Texas, who again, Tennessee has the same win total as Texas, but significantly worse odds. That's the one break I'll give you. Texas visits Ohio State first game of the year. Okay, I understand that. I understand how you can set Texas win total at 9.5, the same as Tennessee's and Georgia's, while when they're visiting the defending national champions at the beginning of the year. They might even be underdogs in that game. I don't know. You guys can let me know if Vegas has set the if Vegas has already set the win total for that game. But I don't understand how you could have Tennessee so much lower than Georgia and then have them at the same odds as Alabama. I'm baffled by it. You guys can tell me if I'm missing something. To me, this totally doesn't make sense. Okay. And I think FanDuel has been very inconsistent with a lot of what they've been predicting with Tennessee. I don't think there's some anti-Tennessee bias for those who are going to suggest it before it gets out there. Vegas doesn't do that. Okay. Let's be very clear. Vegas has no incentive to be anti-Tennessee. That would never make sense for them, largely because that Vegas has a stake in this. They're trying to make money. So I'm going to set the poll question. Tennessee given, let me pull this up real quick. Tennessee given plus 700 odds. Tennessee tied with Alabama for third best odds to win SEC. We put these plus 700. That is too high, too low, just right. And you guys vote on that and you let me know what you think. I honestly think it's given. I don't think it's too low overall because I understand why they'd be below Georgia or Texas. But given that it's tied for third, I got to say it's too low if you're setting the win total at 9.5. Now, me personally, I would actually say it's set their win totals to 9.5. Guys, have I been kicked off? I'm sorry. I'm missing something. Am I out? You guys let me know. Am I back or am I out? Why don't we take a quick break? This show is brought to you by Banks & Jones, tscottjones.com. Play to win, Banks & Jones.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones.
Guys, welcome back. I'm sorry. I apologize. Wi-Fi issue. Glad to be back. I was talking a little bit about Tennessee and their SEC title odds. You guys let me know where it left off. I guess where I was talking is if I was setting Tennessee's odds and I was FanDuel, I would set Tennessee at 8.5, not 9.5, because Tennessee consistently under Heupel has lost to Georgia. They've lost to good teams on the road, and they've lost a game they shouldn't have. Happened every year. Well, they play Georgia next year. They play Alabama and Florida on the road, and both teams I think are going to be good next year. We know Alabama will. And then you add a fourth game that they lose somewhere that they're not expected to lose. So I would actually set their win total at 8.5, not 9.5 for the over-under. However, if you're Vegas and if you're setting their win total at 9.5, I mean, it's hard to make the case that they should have the same odds as Alabama. That's where I was at. So I'm having real issues with the way they've set this whole situation up on FanDuel. But let's also just take a step back and think about this from perspective. Tennessee is in the same boat to win the SEC as Alabama, Georgia, and Texas. That's a pretty impressive crop to be in. We're not talking about this enough. Tennessee was one of 3 SEC teams to make the college football playoff last year in a league of 16. When's the last time Tennessee was a top 3 SEC team? Okay. Tennessee is considered a top 3 to 4 SEC team this year. Honestly, when you think about that, think about let's have some perspective here, guys. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not believe from 2008 all the way through 2021 when Josh Heupel first took over, I don't think Tennessee ever finished in the top 3 in the SEC. I don't think they were ever considered one of the top 3 SEC teams. I certainly don't think they ever were given the 4th best odds or better to win the SEC. So when you take that into account, let's give a little bit of grace to Josh Heupel and Tennessee. They did finish top 3 in the SEC in 2022. That is true. But Alabama did finish higher, and Georgia made the college football playoff, and LSU played for the SEC championship. But even though Tennessee draxed LSU and was the better team, I'm just pointing that out. But look, Tennessee expected to do it again really does stand out, and doing it with a returning quarterback. And here's the other thing we're underrating here. And we talked about this earlier in the week with Dave and Jimmy. Maybe it was last week. Returning Nico Iamaleava is not getting the pub that it maybe should. Josh Heupel, since he's been at Tennessee, has returned his starting quarterback once from 2021 to 2022 with Hendon Hooker. Look what he did in 2022. That's the best year he had by far. Who's to say he can't take a leap with Nico from 2023 to 2024? Now, you can point out that Cedric Tillman also returned for Hooker in 2022, but then Cedric Tillman got hurt earlier in the year, so Josh Heupel had to turn to new receivers. Just like he's turning to new receivers this year with Brew McCoy gone and Squirrel White gone and Dante Thornton gone, which is probably fine because Mike Matthews now knows the system, and I think Mike Matthews could be a through-the-roof great. We're going to talk a little bit about more about that next week. So when you throw that out, you could say maybe, just maybe, Tennessee should be at 9.5 because maybe they're giving Tennessee an extra thing they haven't done in the past just on the concept of them returning a quarterback. So that's kind of interesting on how that could all work out. Now, Victor Roberts says freshman starting at tackle. McCoy is out for a while. Slow your roll. We're going to get to the freshman starting at tackle, Victor. Don't count him out. We're going to get to him in just one second. But just to wrap this up, Tennessee at plus 700 to win the SEC. Our poll question, too high, too low, just right. 62% say just right. 14% say too low. 24% say too high. I say, given where FanDuel set Tennessee's win total, it's too low. But given what I think Tennessee should be projected, it's just right. How about that? Splitting the baby here. That's what I did. All right, so moving on. We just had a question about the right tackle at Tennessee. And we're going to discuss how valuable that right tackle is and what Tennessee did to get him. Brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. According to an ACC collective, Tennessee shelled out some money to land David Sanders Jr. over the weekend. That's right. They shelled out money. An ACC collective suggested to On3 that David Sanders Jr., the 5-star tackle, is the highest paid player in the 2025 recruiting class. Tennessee is no stranger to opening up the checkbook to get certain players they want. We obviously know Nico Iamaleava. It's also true that in terms of just raw ratings, not value based on player or anything like that, not hype, based on raw ratings, David Sanders is the highest rated Tennessee football recruit since Eric Berry of 2007. That's just facts. I'm not saying he's the best since him, but he is the highest rated. Those type of players, even if they're freshmen, you don't recruit them with the expectation that there's a learning curve. You recruit them with the expectation that they'll be ready to start immediately. Remember Trey Smith, guys? Tennessee started him immediately in 2017. Who's hoping to go win his third Super Bowl soon. Eric Berry, I just brought him up. One of the worst decisions ever made that's unanimously accepted by Tennessee is that they didn't start Eric Berry his first game at Cal. Tennessee may have opened the checkbook to get David Sanders, but the question is, was it worth it? Now, this contradicts what we've heard about Tennessee and what their goals are on the NIL front. What we've heard and the stories we've heard is that they are focusing their NIL money on keeping players in-house, not going out and buying players, particularly through the transfer portal. That's why the transfer portal grades were so low this year. They didn't focus on it heavily. And I heard that's the same in recruiting. But what if they're a little bit more specific with certain guys? And with David Sanders, a guy you can sign out of high school, why go the transfer portal route if you think David Sanders is that good where he could start immediately? And maybe he could. You plug him in at right tackle. Look, there's not as much of a learning curve in this offense at tackle as there is at guard. That's just a fact, okay? So you can actually plug tackles in a little more easily. David Sanders, for those who don't remember, was very heavily entertaining going to Ohio State and almost didn't sign with Tennessee, but signed 2 days later. There was probably some negotiation going on, and we know that Ohio State is opening up the NIL checkbook. It seemed like Tennessee, there's another part to their NIL strategy. It's focused on keeping the players they have for chemistry, but it's also focused on, at a couple of specific positions, buying certain players to fill that void that can make an impact immediately. Now, I hear, doesn't he need to gain weight? Yes. All offensive linemen have to gain weight when they get on campus, guys. That's just a common thing. It's common that they have to gain weight. These ratings are based on the fact that people are projecting he can still be great if he gains weight. That's what the off-season conditioning program is for. He's already enrolled. He's already conditioning. He's going to be ready to go for spring. And then there's a summer conditioning program. So there's 2 conditioning periods to get him to the weight they want him to get at. So we're going to see how that goal goes. I'm going to ask on the poll question though. And you guys tell me, was it worth it? Was it worth it for Tennessee to make David Sanders the highest paid 2025 recruit? Allegedly. And we're going to say yes and no. Was it worth it for Tennessee to make David Sanders Jr. the highest paid 2025 recruit, allegedly? You guys let me know. I'm not going to say it was necessarily worth it but I can't say it wasn't because I haven't necessarily seen him play yet. And he fills an immediate void with John Campbell Jr. gone. John Campbell Jr. is leaving. And now Tennessee next year will have two players who were 5-star recruits starting at each tackle spot in Lance Hurd and David Sanders Jr. Again, David Sanders is reportedly extremely talented. Dylan, I get your point. Your issue is putting an 18-year-old kid at tackle against 21 to 22-year-old SEC edge rushers. There are a few rare exceptions, though, to that rule about 18 years old. Not many, but a few, and that's at most positions. If you guys remember, Darnell Wright was able to be serviceable at tackle immediately for Tennessee. I think he immediately took the right tackle job in 2019, and Tennessee's offense was able to go off. Trey Smith started and was an all-SEC guard as a freshman in 2017 on a really bad football team. I just brought up Eric Berry. David Sanders is the highest-rated recruit since Eric Berry. Tennessee started Eric Berry by the second game. They shouldn't have started in the first game. I mean, they should have started in the first game. They were wrong not to, but they did start him by the second game. He became a freshman All-American and was elite. There are some players that can be so good at certain positions that they can start immediately. I do believe that they're banking on David Sanders being that. So I'm going to go ahead and play this game right now. I'll play it for you guys. Bank on it. Brought to you by Commercial Bank. Tennessee expects David Sanders Jr. to be a star immediately as a true freshman. Bank on it.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions.
That's right. Bank on it. Tennessee expects David Sanders Jr. to start immediately. I'm dealing with a couple of questions on the message board. Orange Blood, that's a good question. Trey Smith wasn't higher rated than Berry. He was on ESPN and a couple of services. But when I do my ratings, overall highest rated, I look at it across the board. Trey Smith was actually only a 4-star on Rivals. Big miss. He should have been a 5-star. But if you take all the conglomerate ratings together, David Sanders is easily the most highly rated player Tennessee has gotten since Eric Berry. He is a unanimous 5-star. He and Darnell Wright are the only two unanimous 5-stars that Tennessee has gotten since Eric Berry. So, and by the way, Darnell Wright was ready to start as a freshman. Dylan brings up, if Lance Hurd is what we think he'll be, then he could easily have, Tennessee could easily have 2 bookend tackles for the next 2 seasons. Exactly. And that's what they're banking on. And truth be told, I don't think that's a bad play. When you think about that, that makes it worth opening up the checkbook. Tennessee goes 11-1 last year if they're fully healthy at tackle. Lance Hurd struggling and Lance Hurd being banged up and John Campbell struggling cost them against Arkansas. It just did. Even though Nico Iamaleava didn't play well in that game, that did cost them. So if you and by the way, David Speaks says Sanders will either be Trey Smith, Darnell Wright, or Wanya Morris, Drew Richmond. Well, David, 3 of the people you named were able to start as true freshmen for Tennessee. Say what you want about Wanya Morris. He started as a true freshman. He and Darnell Wright both started as true freshmen. And obviously, and Drew Richmond needed a year to figure it out, became good. And Trey Smith was a star early. Timothy McGee with his drops a super chat. Thank you, Timothy. Says, I don't see paying high school football players. They never did anything in college football. I think it should be more about producing on college football season. Timothy, I mostly agree with you. Because this does feel a little bit like before the NFL rookie salaries came in, when quarterbacks and first-round draft picks could hold out for a ton of money, and you just drop all this money on them as NFL teams, and then they turn out and let you down. I mean, we know the Jamarcus Russell situation. But I think Tennessee can't have 100% principled stance on everything they do right now as they build this program. So I think at this point, they're taking a chance, and they are openly taking a chance on David Sanders, just like they did with Nico when they offered him $2 million. They want to have an overall culture where players stay within the program, and then they want to plug holes where they can elsewhere either on the recruiting trail or in the transfer portal. And when they plug the holes, they want to get the right guys. And if they can get a star, they want to get the star. I think to them, it was worth getting a 5-star in David Sanders out of high school more than a 3-star or 4-star on the transfer portal that could plug in and fill the void, because his 5-star could be ready to start immediately. So he would fill this void, and you got him for a period of time, provided you keep upping his paychecks. So that's where I think they came from getting this player. I understand your point. I'm not here to dispute it, because to a certain degree, I agree, but I can't sit there and say a guy like David Sanders, who again is the highest rated Tennessee player since Eric Berry, and anybody that came close to him, Trey Smith, Darnell Wright, both were starters immediately. So nobody that's this highly rated, nobody on David Sanders' level of recruiting ratings has failed to start as a freshman and be effective as a starter at Tennessee. So they are taking a shot in the dark, yes. But if you look at David Sanders' ranking, and if you look at the history of Tennessee with players that highly rated, they work out. Timothy McGee adds, I am talking across the board, every team, mucho. Yeah, okay. I understand that. Yeah. And I think for the most part, Tennessee is doing it across the board, though. They're being a little more meticulous with their NIL spending. I think David Sanders is a very rare exception. Very similar to, quite honestly, if you want to think about it, he's an exception, kind of how Nico Iamaleava was an exception. They're not doing the Nico Iamaleava move anymore. I can just tell you that right now. So that was a thing of the past. They wanted their quarterback to make the splash, and they got it with Nico Iamaleava. So the show portions of the program is brought to you by HoundDogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. hdknoxville.com. hdknoxville.com. When we come back, those Lady Vols get their biggest win since the national title of 2008. Stick with us 2 minutes. The show is brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used. East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. 2 minutes. We'll be right back.
Hey, Ted, it's time to save some cash during New Year's Dash.
Savings is my prime directive. Let's see what you got, Nick.
Right now, you can save up to $10,000 on new Ford F-150s. Beat that, Ted.
Most impressive, but how about 0% for 72 months on Ford Lightning or Ford Mustang Mach-E?
Ted Russell Ford has huge savings on whatever you're looking for.
This checks out.
Come see us today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike, or online at tedrussellford.net.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Welcome back to the program. Is Off the Hook Sports with Caleb Calhoun. The show again brought to you by Banks & Jones. represented by T. Scott Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. Live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville. New and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. So, it's been a long time since the biggest story for Tennessee was the Lady Vols. But that's where we're at now with Tennessee, because Tennessee just got, bar none, their biggest win as a program since their last national championship game, which they won in 2008. Now, I want to say up front, they have beaten higher ranked teams before then. UConn was number 5 on Thursday night, and Tennessee beat UConn, for those who don't know, for those who are winning, 80-76. They've beaten a couple of top 3 teams, most notably right after their national title. They beat Stanford in overtime in early 2008, but that team was not good, was not that great. It's definitely, and you guys can check me on this, but I do believe this is their highest ranked win since Pat Summitt retired. I could be wrong on that. Check with me on Holly Warlick, top 10, top 5 wins. But I do believe that this is their highest ranked win since Pat Summitt retired. Tennessee beats UConn 80-76. This is the most signature win for Kim Caldwell. There is no doubt about it. And the way Tennessee was able to win this game speaks very highly of how they're developing as a team. Okay, because in case you forgot, this Tennessee team, we had Steve Hamer on Tuesday, and he's dead right, by the way. Their issue the whole time has been if they're not hitting from 3, they're not winning. Because in case you forget, Tennessee, and this is a big deal now, Tennessee, Kim Caldwell recruited for size, athleticism, and hopes that with enough open looks, they can make enough threes. Now, that has happened at times throughout the year, but these aren't 3-point shooters. That's what she's got coming in next year. So you're going to have off-game shooting the 3. When you do, can you manufacture other ways to score? And against teams like South Carolina that are much bigger, that are much more skilled in the half-court game, you just can't, which is why they win. And actually against most teams, it's that way. So against UConn, Tennessee doesn't shoot well from 3. They shoot 7-28. Most notably, the other part of their game, forcing turnovers, they only forced 12 turnovers. UConn actually forced 19. What happened? Tennessee dominated on the boards. They dominated on the boards as they had 46 rebounds to UConn's 34, 17 offensive rebounds to UConn's 13, and they had a better half-court game. They outplayed UConn in the half-court game. They outplayed UConn from the paint. Z Spearman was 6 of 9 from the field. She only hit 1 3, but she had 16 points and 7 rebounds, leading the team in scoring. Samara Spencer, 6 of 12, 2 of 5 from 3, but 14 points. She hit 4 of 7 from inside the paint. Delisha Cooper missed all 4 3-pointers she took. Still hit 4 field goals inside the paint. And Jewel Spear, who scored 12 points and is supposed to be a 3-point specialist to a certain degree, was only 1 of 6 from 3, but she was 4 of 4 inside the paint. This is what Kim Caldwell's been working on all year, guys. She has tried to get her team to be more effective scoring in the paint when the threes aren't falling, and they finally were able to do it. That's how they beat UConn. So this is not just a stepping stone in terms of beating UConn, which we're going to talk about in a second. This is a stepping stone in the sense of the way Tennessee won. They haven't beaten elite teams like this. Now, I didn't say anything, but I thought going into the matchup, this actually was a top 5 matchup, a top 5 team or a top 10 team that actually favored Tennessee more than the other ones they faced, the LSUs and the South Carolinas, because UConn is more guard oriented. They're not built around size as much. I mean, Gino Auriemma he's always built his teams guard oriented. He really revolutionized backcourt play at UConn, in women's basketball, that is. And that's how UConn got so dominant for so long and then had a monopoly on recruiting. At the same time, I also will just say this, Gino, and we're seeing this as parity's crept into college basketball, women's basketball over the past 9 years. Gino ain't that great of a coach. And it's getting exposed more and more year to year. Gino had a monopoly on recruiting that was unprecedented. But if you look at UConn and what has been going on with Gino, they're not they made a lot of mistakes down the stretch. Tennessee wore UConn down, but Kim Caldwell coached circles around Gino Auriemma at the end of that game. His rotations were very, very confusing, honestly. I did not think he ran his rotations well at all. And his rotations were very confusing. And he was not great at the half-court game. He just wasn't. And Kim Caldwell, it doesn't even focus on running a half-court offense. But she coached circles around him in the half-court scoring offense the other night. I never saw that before. I never thought Gino could do that. So we're going to play hot or cold real quick. And first I want to share a super chat. Sandras Rux, thanks you, says, this was a huge win for us, and I'm proud of my team. Sandras, thanks you for the super chat. It was a huge win. We're going to talk about the importance of the win for in a second. But let me just ask this poll question first. Is Tennessee's win over UConn the Vols' Lady Vols' biggest win since their 2008 national title, or since their last national title? Yes and no. Let's see what you guys think. Give me 30 seconds. We're going to play hot or cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air. There's your best.
All right, so let's play a little hot or cold, and we're going to start with the Lady Vols half-court offense. Hot or cold? I'm hot on them. I've been low on them all year. The half-court offense is where it needs to be for them to make a run in the NCAA tournament. Now, if they can do this week in and game out, and if they get the favorable matchups, which is guard-oriented teams, not the South Carolinas, they can win a few NCAA tournament games. They are not a national title team, guys. I'm just going to tell you straight up, they're not. But they can win a few NCAA tournament games and make a splash with this half-court offense. Their half-court defense, I'm cold on that, honestly. I think, and this is going to be a bit of a drop-off, but I think that Tennessee's half-court defense benefited from Gino Auriemma's horrid coaching down the stretch of this game, honestly. So I'm actually cold on their half-court defense because I thought Gino Auriemma coached a very, very poor game. Didn't know exactly how to work the inside and work the paint. And again, his rotations were really, really confusing. So I still think Tennessee's half-court defense is an issue long-term. They just benefited from a guard-oriented team not knowing how to work the offense long-term, which is why even though they only had 12 turnovers, this guard-oriented team not being able to work the half-court game cost them dearly, and that's a major, major indictment of Gino Auriemma's coaching. Speaking of that, Kim Caldwell's coaching ability. I am much hotter on it now than I was a day ago. I am extremely hot. I am scorching hot on it. And let me explain why. I had a little bit of a concern for the Lady Vols that Kim Caldwell was a system coach. And what I mean by that is she had this system of I run 10 players, I play controlled chaos, and we just do the same thing up and down every time. I knew those things are always good enough to get you to a certain level, but then you have to be able to adjust once you have the talent and once you're in certain situations that don't allow you to do that. That's how you win championships. And Tennessee's goal is to win championships. She showed last night she can adjust because she, again, outcoached one of the greatest coaches in the game in the half-court sets. Kim Caldwell did a significantly better job than Gino Auriemma down the stretch coaching out of the half-court, which I did not see coming ever, okay? So with that in mind, I'm way hotter. She is not just a system coach. And so I got to give her so much credit for that. Mucho Boomin says it will help with recruiting, and now the team sees that her way of basketball can win at that level. Yes. Derek says to fall in love with overachieving teams. It's hard not to. Yep. Mucho Bubin says they have to attack the basket, catch and shoot threes, rebounding, and play hard on defense. It gets frustrating watching give up easy baskets. I agree with you, Mucho Bubin, but you got to remember how this team is designed. And that's where I got concerned about the whole Kim Caldwell being a system coach. They didn't do that as much yesterday. They adjusted a lot, but I am cold on their half-court defense and their ability to stop easy baskets from being given up because, again, they played a guard-oriented team that didn't shoot the ball well, but they also that did not do what they should have done in the final 5 minutes of that game to score. Matt says Caldwell with better talent equals natties. Yes. Now here's the way Caldwell is going to build this team. The way it's built right now is if they are, David speaks. I know I should have been corrected when I said greatest coach, not named Pat Summitt. You're right. He's not the greatest coach. One of the greatest coaches, a legend in his own right. Okay. So with Kim Caldwell, with this team, how it's going to be built next year. She's got the number 1 recruiting class coming in. All 5 stars, very guard oriented. They're going to be elite shooters. And they're tall enough to be able to play defense at this level. The issue with this team this year is she didn't recruit shooters in the offseason. She recruited athletes who are good enough to shoot when they're open. So it's streaky. They'll be on a game and they'll be off a game. And if they're off, they can be in trouble and lose. You get enough elite shooters, though, you're not going to be off. See, this is the thing this is this day and age of college basketball. Look at how Golden State was built. Golden State just did the theory of if we do enough spacing and we get Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green hitting threes, and Klay Thompson and a bunch of other guys off the bench, two of us are bound to be on every game. And that's exactly how Caldwell is building this team. So get excited, guys, because this Lady Vols team, we're just scratching the surface of what we're going to see with them going forward. This was a legendary, heck of a stepping stone win. I mean, when you talk about stepping stone wins, this is one of the biggest stepping stone, like signature first wins for coaches in a long time. Let's go back and look at those. Okay. Like, let's think signature wins for coaches. Okay. Josh Heupel at Alabama, beating Alabama in 2022. That was a signature win his second year. That's when you were like, Josh Heupel is here. He has arrived. Remember Butch Jones in 2013? An underrated signature win. Whatever you think about Butch Jones, he led Tennessee to an upset of South Carolina in 2013 with the best team that Steve Spurrier ever had at South Carolina. That team would have, I don't know if you guys know this, if Butch Jones doesn't upset South Carolina that year, South Carolina goes to the SEC title. They may beat Auburn and they may play for the national title. They were number 5 that year. So that was a crazy upset that Butch Jones led. That was a signature win. Jeremy Pruitt was at Auburn his first year. Derek Dooley had no signature wins, just so you know. Lane Kiffin's was South Carolina at home, but not anything special. Philip Fulmer's was his just first 2 games, his second and third game as a head coach when he beat Georgia at Georgia and then Florida at home as an interim coach. Josh Heupel's, before the Alabama game, there was the Kentucky win the previous year that got people excited. Give him credit for that. Bruce Pearl in basketball, his signature win was ironically at Rick Barnes in Texas, his first year at Tennessee when Tennessee just beat Texas by 20 on the road and Texas was a top 10 team. So signature wins happen, but this is one of the biggest signature wins of a coach, particularly first-year head coach, in the history of Tennessee sports. Tennessee beat UConn for the first time since 2007. It's their biggest win since the national title in 2008, and it's really not even close. And going to the poll question real quick, everybody agrees with me. Bad poll. 17 votes, 100% say yes. It's Tennessee's win over UConn is the Lady Vols' biggest win since their last national title. And by the way, Gino Auriemma calling fans stupid yesterday after he was part of fueling this rivalry and being a hypocrite was so ridiculous. It was very clear last night how electric that game was, how electric the rivalry is. And in this age of women's college basketball, with the excitement getting bigger, it was high time Tennessee was able to be a part of that again, because this is one of the most legendary programs, and they are. So let's just say what it is. It was so exciting to see that moment for the Lady Vols. And man, this recruiting class, you were right, can be scary. I've already got the Lady Vols winning the national title in 2027. Not next year with all the freshmen, but 2027. I got them winning the national title in 2027 if they can keep everybody. So just watch out for that. This is obviously an incredibly gifted team that she has right now, and her recruiting class next year. You guys are right. It's going to be scary. And we don't know what she's going to do in the transfer portal either. So she could end up she could end up loading up on more talent than we even realize, guys. Let's just point that out, okay? So this is going to be kind of wild, the way this all ends up. But kudos to the Lady Vols. Kudos to Kim Caldwell. Huge win for this program. If you guys haven't watched them play, watch them play. They are the most fun team to watch in, I think, the history of the program because for no fault of their own, but just a different time, Pat Summitt's programs were typically built on defense and rebounding, with the exception of that 96-97 team that was the underdog team, the 3 seed to go win the national title and actually upset an undefeated UConn in the NCAA tournament. So again, kudos to the Lady Vols. This was a huge win for them. It is time for this day in Tennessee sports history. And it's a transition to Tennessee basketball. On this day in Tennessee basketball history, the Vols beat the 13th ranked South Carolina Gamecocks 70-69 way back in 1998. That was Jerry Green's second win over a top 25 school. It was his first year as head coach of the men's basketball program. And Tennessee that year reached the NCAA tournament, lost in the first round. But while there wasn't a lot of belief in Jerry Green, this was the year that laid the foundation for the excitement of what was to come with the program over the next 3 years. And this was the beginning of the Tony Harris years. He was a freshman, and everybody was excited about what was to come with the program going forward. And, of course, they were preseason top 10 the next year. They made the Sweet 16 the year after that. And then the year after that, they got a size number 4 before everything collapsed in February and March. And then they lost in the first round, and Jerry Green was shown the door. But this win over South Carolina was a 70-69 win. It was when the excitement was still rising behind the men's Tennessee basketball program and what they could be as they made the NCAA tournament that year. That is this day in Tennessee basketball history. And now we go to men's Tennessee basketball because the Vols are about to travel to face Oklahoma on Saturday. Tennessee is coming off a big win over Missouri, where Missouri actually played as well as you could play, and Tennessee found a way to win. I'm still more impressed by their win over Missouri at full strength than I am their win over Florida with 2 players out, because with Zakai Ziegler and Igor Milicic out, because largely they benefited from Florida playing horrible. Well, with that momentum, Tennessee has to go visit Oklahoma. Oklahoma is unranked, but they're 16-6 and 3-6 in the SEC. So Tennessee continues their trend of doing something that they've done all year, which is the stat is crazy. They're more than halfway through the SEC schedule. Every SEC game for Tennessee has either been against a ranked opponent or a team with a winning record on the road. They have yet to play an unranked team at home. I'm not kidding you on that. That is an insane stat for this program. Now, of course, Kentucky's probably going to fall out of the top 25 soon, and that loss is going to look much worse than it did because of how things have played out. However, it's still an insane stat. So Tennessee's going to visit Oklahoma on Saturday, and this is a noon tip-off, and Oklahoma is no slouch, okay? The Oklahoma Sooners, like I told you, are 16-6 and 3. Even though they're 3-6 in the SEC, they are definitely a team looking to make a run that could make the NCAA tournament. They're a dangerous program. Right now, as far as things are looking for Tennessee, look, Rick Barnes' team is starting to get a little bit better and adjust to SEC play. As I told you earlier, well, actually, our man Steve Hamer told you earlier, Tennessee's schedule did not adequately prepare them for the SEC, and it wasn't their fault. I never thought about it until Steve Hamer brought it up. But Tennessee played only 2 teams that ended up being good. Now, they were both on the road, Louisville and Illinois. Both are better than we thought. But then they played Baylor, Miami, Virginia, and Syracuse. All games they thought would prepare them for SEC play, and all of those teams have turned out to be significantly worse than they were. Miami's coach bolted on them before the season started. They haven't recovered. Syracuse is having a really underachieving second year under their head coach right now. Baylor is still winning, but not the top 25 program we thought they were. And Virginia has collapsed. Those are 4 bad. That's 3 bad teams and 1 mediocre team. And they had to use that, which they thought would be elite teams, to prepare them for SEC play. Tennessee right now, just to give you an idea of how loaded the SEC is, Tennessee is 6-4 in the SEC, and they're ranked number 4 overall. They are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're 6th in the SEC right now. Interestingly enough, They are tied for third if you just look at the wins. They played one more SEC game than Missouri, Florida, and Texas A&M, who are all 6-3. So they're tied for third if you just go based on the wins, along with Ole Miss, by the way. So Auburn leads. They're 9-0 in the SEC. Alabama's second at 8-1. And then you have Missouri, Florida, Texas A&M, Tennessee, and Ole Miss, all with 6 wins. Missouri, Florida, Texas A&M all have 3 losses. Tennessee and Ole Miss all have 4. It's a total cluster, by the way, of the SEC. And just in case you don't know, all of those teams are in the top 25. Every one of them. Plus Mississippi State, who is 4-5 in the SEC and number 22. Vanderbilt has Florida with the top 25. They're 4-5 in the SEC right now. And Kentucky is number 14. They're 4-5 in the SEC. So this team right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, has 9 of 18 teams in the top 25. And 9 of 16 teams in the top 25. And 14 of 16 are still looking to make the NCAA tournament and might be able to do it. That's how loaded and tough this conference is right now. And in terms of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, those 7 teams with 6 wins or more, they're all in the top 25. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them are in the top 10. So 5 top 10 teams. I mean, this conference is just brutal. This conference is just absolutely brutal, guys. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. And it's really going to start to you wonder if they're ever going to start separating themselves a little bit. Now, over the weekend, you have a few games that could really help separate these 6-win teams. For instance, Texas A&M and Missouri are both 6-3. They play each other on Saturday. Florida's 6-3 and Auburn's 9-0. They play each other on Saturday. Ole Miss is 6-4, but has to visit LSU, who's a dangerous team. And Alabama's 8-1, but has to visit John Calipari's Arkansas, which could be figuring some things out. We don't know. I'm just saying that this team could end up. This is a complete cluster of teams, and it's getting brutal. So, what is Tennessee's outlook as they get set to face Oklahoma? How serious should they take this game? I've told you guys they should apply load management at times, but I think they should take the Oklahoma game seriously because it's a road game against an unranked team. It's going to be a quality win, and it could be a worse looking loss than it actually is if you lose based on the way the net rankings are done. So I think you should try to beat Oklahoma. I also think because you lost them at home, you should try to beat Kentucky when you face them on Tuesday night. I do. I know that's one I would say throw it, but Kentucky's struggling right now. So these next 2 road games, I think Tennessee should try to win. But I do think they should rest their starters when they visit the Texas A&M Aggies on the 22nd and when they visit Ole Miss on the 5th. And maybe even when they play Alabama at home on the 1st of March. We don't know. We'll play that one by ear. They definitely should have applied load management when they lost to Auburn a couple weeks ago. I thought they exerted way too much effort in that game. You guys know how I feel about that. I'm not a fan of effort. Like, as Matt says, number 1 seed, but currently tied for 3rd in the SEC. Yeah, exactly. But, Matt, it's even crazier when you think about it because Tennessee is a projected number 1 seed. And if you go just by win percentage and not wins, Tennessee's actually tied for 6th in the SEC with Ole Miss. It's that crazy. This conference is that loaded. Now, have they finally adjusted to SEC play? That's the real question as they get set to face a unranked team on the road. Because that's what Steve Hamer brought about. I think they have. I think what they did with Missouri shows that. Chaz Lanier sometimes is still not being aggressive enough, particularly early. But he did have 10 points in this game when Igor Milicic Jr. was the focus of the game because of the way the Missouri defense was working, and Igor Milicic Jr. creatively found new ways to score, and he's got to stick with that. I got a stat of the day for you that's pretty freaking crazy when it comes to Igor Milicic Jr. That we're going to get to after this. But overall, I think Tennessee basketball has somewhat adjusted to SEC play, which should allow them to beat Oklahoma on the road on Saturday. Now, has this adjustment to SEC play, is that good enough for the rest of the way? Because Auburn's got such a lead on everybody. They're 9-0 in the SEC. Maybe. Auburn still has to visit Kentucky. They still have to visit Texas A&M. They still have to visit Alabama. They have to play Alabama at home. They have to play Florida at home. They have to play Ole Miss at home. And they have to visit Vanderbilt, where anything can happen. So if you're going for an SEC regular season title, it ain't out of the cards just yet. Okay, let's just talk about that. Tennessee is a missed 3 and a bad call away from beating Auburn. And they're just that fluky upset loss to Kentucky away from being 8-2 right now, with Auburn being 8-1. So Tennessee could easily be contending for the SEC title right now. Of course, Tennessee's schedule is not much better, but a lot of the brutal parts of their schedule are behind them. But they still have to visit Kentucky, visit Texas A&M, host Alabama, and visit Ole Miss. So the Alabama game at home is the one that you really want to circle. But there's a path, I guess what I'm getting at. There's a path for Tennessee to still win the SEC regular season title, but who cares? Quite honestly, who cares? They've won the SEC tournament under Rick Barnes. They won the SEC title outright last year under Rick Barnes. Just focus on winning a national title at this point. Who cares about winning anything in the conference? You're going to get a number 1 seed if you do what you're supposed to do. And so if I am Tennessee, I do what I have to do to get to the NCAA tournament and have a 1, 2, or 3 seed. Any of those seeds are fine. Okay. 4, you're not crazy about, but 3-1, take the win. You can go make a national title run if you do that. So, I mean, I don't think there's much to worry about, but I do think they have adjusted to SEC play because they found new creative ways to score. And that adjustment to SEC play comes in large part from Igor Milicic Jr., who by playing more inside, even though he can shoot the 3, now teams have to respect him from anywhere on the court. That opens things up for Zakai, which is why he was better from 3. Chaz Lanier is still always a threat. And Felix Opera, as he's developing as a scorer and a free throw shooter now, and you have to respect his free throw shooting, Igor and Felix allow Tennessee to play inside-out basketball, which, again, that's how this team is constructed this year. I'm not like inside-out every year. I wasn't last year, but that's how the team's constructed this year. They can play inside-out, and that's what they need to do with Igor and Felix. And because of that, they have adjusted to SEC play. So I think Tennessee's only going to get better from here. It is time for the stat of the day. The stat of the day brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville. Stat of the day after a quick message from Ted Russell Ford.
Hey Ted, it's time to save some cash to our New Year's Dash.
Savings is my prime directive. Let's see what you got, Nick.
Right now, you can save up to $10,000 on new Ford F-150s. Beat that, Ted.
Most impressive, but how about 0% for 72 months on Ford Lightning or Ford Mustang Mach-E?
Ted Russell Ford has huge savings on whatever you're looking for.
This checks out.
Come see us today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
All right. The stat of the day is this. Igor Milicic Jr. of Tennessee basketball is the only NBA, WNBA, or Division I men's or women's player this century to have a game with 20 points or more, 10 rebounds or more, 5 assists or more, 4 blocks or more, 2 steals or more, and shoot 75% from the field, 50% from 3, and 75% from the free throw line in one game. That's what he did against Missouri. It is the best individual game in Division I, NBA, or WNBA basketball this century by anybody. Yeah, that's a pretty crazy stat, isn't it? When we come back, we're going to take a quick break. Is Greg Sankey making way too much money as he runs the SEC into the ground? You guys know how I feel about him. I'm going to address that. Stick with us. 2 minutes.
Well, Ted, looks like you're settling right into your new space.
Affirmative. Powered by the new Ford Lightning.
You know, that would be incredible for camping, tailgating. The options are unlimited. Why don't you take a little power for yourself, buddy?
Beep boop beep bop.
Get into this new 2024 Ford F-150 Power Boost for only $53,300, or get 0% for 72 months on a Ford F-150 Lightning. Come see us today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike, or online at tedrussellford.net.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7.
The SEC had a dip in total revenue from 2023 to 2024. Excuse me, from the 2022-23 season to the 2023-2024 season. Welcome back to everybody. I am Caleb Calhoun of Off the Hook Sports, and I'm going to talk to you about why Greg Sankey is destroying the SEC slowly but surely with every decision he makes and everything he does. This is a take on Greg Sankey. I am going to go ham on him and sit back and enjoy it. The league reported a slight dip in revenue, going from $852.6 million in 2022-23 to $839.7 million in 2023-2024. Now, to be fair, they distributed more money to their full members, reporting from about $718 million to $790.7 million. And part of that's factoring in the partial amounts for Oklahoma and Texas joining. So they had to give more money, but they had a dip in revenue. This is before the ESPN contract came through. Okay, this is before the ESPN contract came through. More importantly, in case you want to know, the Big Ten for fiscal year 2023 reported $880 million in revenue. That's right, $880 million. So the Big Ten is already beating the SEC, which had a drop in revenue this year, or this past year, 2023, 2024. And now the Big Ten is clearing them by $40 million. And this is before the new TV contracts are coming in, which that's going to be reported after this fiscal year, 2024-25, and the same with the Big Ten, 2024-25, in which the Big Ten has $1 billion deal and the SEC has a $300 million deal per year. Greg Sankey's got to be fired. Greg Sankey's got to go. He's got to go now before people start talking about him in the most negative ways. Guys, look at what the ACC's been stuck with what everybody considers the worst deal ever when they signed a 20-year long-term deal in 2016. Look at the old Pac-12, which has dissolved because Larry Scott thought it was a smart move to give them a long-term contract way back in 2009, 2008, and people thought it was smart, and it ended up getting them stuck way behind as more revenue was happening. Greg Sankey did the same thing. He did a 10-year deal, and he did it back in 2019 before even knowing Texas and Oklahoma were going to join, thinking all the way out to 2024. And then the Big Ten follows the SEC after they add Texas and Oklahoma. They go add USC and UCLA, and then they negotiate their deal, and they're able to get it done within 2 years, and then they have 7 years, and they're going to be done with that, and they'll be renegotiating in 2031 for $1.3 billion or more, probably. That's my guess. So there will be a 3-year period where the Big Ten is bringing in $1 billion more in revenue than the SEC from the TV deals. But before we're even getting to that point, before we're even getting there, Greg Sankey and the SEC brought in less money than the Big Ten the past 2 years. Oh, and by the way, The SEC's revenue share is decreasing. They brought in less money in 2023-24 than they did in 2022-23. What? Guys, I'm sorry. Now, you could make up the point of, oh, they didn't have a team in the national championship game in 2024, and they did in 2023. That's fair. I give you that. But I'll raise you one by saying that should have been made up for by in 2023 during that season. The SEC championship game was much bigger of a deal than the 2022 SEC title game, because the 2022 SEC title game was one in which everybody knew Georgia was going to blow out LSU, whereas in 2023, you had two teams playing to get into the college football playoff. So that's not an excuse. Okay. Now, more importantly, as the SEC reported a dip in revenue, Greg Sankey gave himself a pay raise. Greg Sankey's salary increased by $670,000 from $3.55 million to $4.22 million. Now, I'm no economer here, okay? But if your brand, if you've got the best brand, the best product in your field, and you're still making less money off it than another product, and you see a decrease in that product's revenue from year to year, shouldn't your salary decrease a little bit too? Just a thought, just what I'm saying, okay? In 5 years, Greg Sankey is going to be looked at like Larry Scott was with the Pac-12. In 5 years, Greg Sankey is going to be looked at like Larry Scott was with the Pac-12. He is destroying the SEC right in front of us. And guys, need to take a chill pill, probably need to get into a hot tub, probably one by Dynasty Pools and Spas. So I'm going to give you a quick ad from Dynasty Pools and Spas and come back and talk more about this.
Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com.
The SEC is killing itself with what they're doing because of what Greg Sankey has done in the back contracts. You know, Greg Sankey, like the rest of the commissioners in college football, the Big Four, which we're going to talk about soon, and I'm talking Tony Petitti, even the ACC and Big 12 commissioners, they've taken a blowtorch to tradition and everything we love about college football. They've destroyed the Pac-12. They've devalued conference championship games to the umpth degree. They've created imbalanced schedules with these super conferences. And everything we heard about why they did that is it's just business. This is the money era of college football, and you got to do what you got to do. Okay, but if it's just business and you got to do what you got to do, well, hey, shouldn't you make the best business moves? Because that ain't what Greg Sankey is doing. I want to bring up a stat for you guys real quick. Okay. The SEC, like most people, has an exit fee. Now, theoretically, no one has ever asked to leave the SEC, okay? Like, let's just point that out. No one has ever actually asked to leave the SEC. But they do have an exit fee of $45 million, okay? They have an exit fee of $45 million. I'm going to make a prediction right now. I'm doing the math in my head. All right. If you divide what I think the Big Ten's next contract is going to be, and you look at what the SEC's next contract is going to be, there's going to be a $50 million difference in TV revenue between the Big Ten payouts and the SEC payouts once this contract is up in 2031 for the Big Ten. I am telling you guys right now, I'm going to go ahead and say it. There's going to be a long-term blue blood charter member of the SEC that takes the plunge and leaves for the Big Ten. Yes, you heard me right. There will be a charter member, an original member of the SEC that's a blue blood that takes the plunge and leaves for the Big Ten. I am not kidding. Think about this for a minute. If your exit fee is $45 million, heck, right now the Big Ten schools are just, with this new contract, they're bringing in $20 million, $21 million more per school than the SEC. That's an NIL budget. You make up the exit fee in 3 years. You make up the exit fee in 3 years. That's insane. Okay. So yeah, they'll pay that. Now there's obviously the grant of rights issue, which every conference has. Okay. Every conference has, and SEC teams have it too. So you obviously have to sign a grant of rights contract if you're in the SEC, and that thing is more ironclad than people want it to be. That's why Florida State and Clemson, everybody was hoping they'd get out of the ACC. We reported to you guys first. It's not happening. Those grant of rights contracts are ironclad. What that means is if a school in the SEC left the SEC would get to control all their revenue. That typically lasts through a TV contract of some sort. I don't know exactly when the grant of rights ends for the SEC. Okay, for the SEC teams, but those are temporary contracts. And if you have to sign on to the grant of rights, by the way. So for instance, the SEC can't claim grant of rights over you if the league can vote collectively on an exit fee. They can't vote collectively on grant of rights. The school just has to agree that they get their grant of rights. When the grant of rights agreement is up, whenever that is, and I don't have the data in front of me, there will be an SEC team that leaves for the Big Ten. And it's going to be the most humiliating moment of any SEC commissioner's career when that happens. The SEC has lost teams before. Sewanee gave up football, so they lost them. Georgia Tech didn't like certain scholarship and academic rules, so they left for the ACC. Stupid. Tulane did the same thing, and now Tulane is Group of 5. It's a different era. Okay? There will be a team leave for leave the SEC for the Big Ten whenever the grant of rights is up. Now, I'm here to ask you this. I set up a poll question. Is Greg Sankey running the SEC into the ground? 56% say yes, 44% say no. People don't know. People really don't understand. Mark Carter says UK would leave. Mark, I got to be honest, I don't know if Kentucky would have the leverage to leave, to be fair. I'm not sure if the Big Ten would take Kentucky. It would have to be more of a blue blood. But what people don't realize is that it's a slow decline. It's a slow burn. And I've been on the soapbox and I'm staying on it. But it's a slow decline of when it happens. But as it happens, it's going to get faster and faster and faster and worse and worse and worse really, really fast. So you're not seeing it now. I told you yesterday, SEC is still dominating recruiting on the trail. They're still dominating the transfer portal. They still are dominating the Super Bowl. They have the dominant NFL talent. They are the fertile recruiting ground in the South. But over time, those TV deals are going to make more money, are going to make a lot more money for the Big Ten, and the SEC's going to be totally screwed when that happens. Okay. So the real issue is, again, what's it going to be? By the way, I'll just say this. How are you dropping your revenue? How are you having a dip in revenue before these new TV contracts? What is happening? This is all I'm bringing you guys this because Greg Sankey signed this bad deal, and I've been projecting how things would fall apart. But the SEC is falling further behind the Big Ten now before the deals even go into effect. I'm telling you guys, this is going to be disastrous for the SEC long term. It's going to be embarrassing and it's going to be humiliating. And I hear a lot of people saying constantly, well, that contract with ESPN, they can't stay in it. You know, these contracts aren't ironclad. Greg Sankey basically tried to tell Dave in an interview a couple of years ago, that contract's not ironclad. It's ironclad. That's wishful thinking. That contract is ironclad. I'm just going to bring that to you right now. That contract is totally ironclad, and it's a real problem. The show brought to you by Double D Piping. A quick message from them, and I'll talk more about this.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beat. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Scotty Vols says this conversation seems irrelevant with the constant realignment. No, Scotty. The constant realignment, what it's doing is it's propelling 2 major conferences into an arms race. And the SEC and the Big Ten are the Soviets in the United States in the Cold War. And right now, the SEC is looking to be more like the Soviet Union, and the Big Ten is looking to be more like the United States, because as we know, the United States had much more capital to withstand that long term. This is an arms race. This is an arms race because one conference is in the rush to become the world's sole superpower, and the Big Ten has a giant leg up on the SEC. And when that and as of right now, blue blood SEC teams aren't feeling it. They could feel it in 10 years, though. And then what happens when you have these massive recruiting disadvantages? Look, I'm telling you right now, if you're Tennessee, you figure out what you can do. If you're Tennessee, if you're Alabama, if you're Florida, if you're Georgia, you do what you can right now to plan an exit from the SEC, and you pay that exit fee if you have to. The grant of rights thing you got to figure out. You just can't afford to play football with no TV exposure. Okay, so the grant of rights thing you got to figure out, but you wait till it expires, and you bolt for the Big Ten. I mean, you run to the Big Ten at this point, because Greg Sankey has absolutely set this conference on a path to irrelevancy, and it's slow. It's a slow burn, but it's going to happen. The SEC has lost the arms race with the Big Ten just because of this revenue, and you're going to see it. And I'm saying after 5 years, it is disastrous. And the thing that's so bad, the reason I'm talking about this now is because of the fact that Greg Sankey increased his salary. Yes, that's right. Increased his salary while the revenue for the SEC dipped year over year. He doesn't care about the long-term success of the SEC. He cares about his money, okay? And you guys are letting a North Carolina grad destroy what was built over a century. It's disastrous. Almost a century. The SEC was founded in 1933. This is a disaster waiting to happen. And I'm telling you, be patient. It's going to come. More stories about changes to college football when we come back, because, in case you haven't heard, the Power Four is about to take over college football. 2 minutes. Stick with us. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. I am Calhoun. Before we get to our final topic, which will be brought to you by Peak IV Hydration in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live your life to the fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. PeakIVHydration.com. Guys, I'm actually trying to drop the Peak IV Hydration link in the chat real quick, so just give me a second. Dropping it in right there, Peak IV Hydration. Also, I want to get, before we do that, I want to address a few message board debates, and these debates are brought to you by Joe Newbert Collision Center. For nearly 50 years, Newbert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. JoeNewbertCollision.com. Also brought to you by National Fitness Center. Unmatched value, limitless options. Begin your fitness journey today. NFC1.com. All right, Adam. All right, you made the right point at the very end, because I'm ready to debate you, Adam. I get everything you're saying. You're talking about LA and Oregon are not really what people think. They're not going to bring in the revenue people think. Okay, fair enough. I think you're missing my point. I understand what you're saying, but that also is indicative of how bad of a job Greg Sankey did. The SEC has better brands by far than the Big Ten, much more valuable, which makes it all the more egregious that Greg Sankey secured a contract worth 1/3, less than 1/3 of the Big Ten's TV contract. So while the SEC has better brands, the gap in these TV contracts are so insane that the SEC is going to fall behind. It's not about how good the brands are. You've seen this in business before. Like I said, sometimes one person has a better product, another person has a bad product. The one with the better product, or not a bad product, but a less good product. But the one with the less good product ends up taking over because the one with the better product did a poor job running it. I mean, I'll just give you an example. You guys can hate me. In the 90s, Pepsi surpassed Coke for a little while. I'm sorry, Pepsi's not better than Coke. I don't care what you guys say. Coke is significantly better than Pepsi. But for a period, Coke was a more poorly run business. And so Pepsi surpassed it. Happens all the time. So I'm telling you guys this right now. It is becoming an issue. Now, Mark asked a good question. Does the Mega League, is that the only way out? That's possible. And that's what would happen basically if the Blue Bloods, unless the SEC enjoyed the Big Ten. But the question is, who's going to be the Mega League at that point? You would theoretically love to see the SEC and Big Ten in an arms race and be like the AL and NL. But sadly, given how far behind the SEC, because that would at least keep some tradition in the fold. But sadly, given how far behind in the arms race the SEC is to the Big Ten at this point, the Big Ten just might absorb them. Okay? They are like, to go even further on this, what I'm seeing is, okay, I said the Big Ten and the SEC are the U.S. and the Soviet Union in the Cold War. As we know, after the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviet Union collapsed in 91, NATO started expanding on Russia's borders. The Big Ten is going to be NATO at that point, and they're going to start expanding on the SEC's borders. They're going to start taking SEC teams. All right, they're already doing it. Just to give you a little bit of geopolitical history right there. Matt says, so Texas oil money can't compete with Big Ten TV contract. Not convinced. No, Matt. It can, but the TV contracts is a source of revenue. There are other sources of revenue. I'm not saying that they can't. What I am saying is when you add the Texas oil money by itself isn't going to make the difference. No, it's not. When you're talking, when every school in a few years is going to be bringing in $50 million more in money just from TV contracts, yeah, the Texas oil money is not going to make that difference. The Texas oil money is already embedded into Texas's revenue. Those other schools have other sources of revenue, not Texas oil money revenue, but the 50 million is going to push them ahead no matter what. I'm sorry, that's just the case. And so, yes, this is a problem. So I think the biggest move is, I think the Super League is what's going to happen, but unfortunately for the SEC, the Big Ten is going to be the Super League because Greg Sankey destroyed and is in the process of destroying a once great tradition. The program brought to you by, portions of the program, are brought to you by Work Trucks. We're all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle. Now, time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down and has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is also quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with the nap-hide work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Truck supplies vehicles to people just like you and gets you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks, and that's a fact. Service industry, remember Work Trucks. Work Trucks carries trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks. Clinton Highway in Knoxville and in downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go online to worktrucksllc.com. worktrucksllc.com with an X. Why risk chancing your future and business on the wrong piece of equipment that burns your time? worktrucksllc.com. Work Trucks will also work to make sure you have the perfect work vehicle you have to have. They'll even find a perfect truck, outfit it, and make sure it fits your needs to a T. Work Trucks with an X. LLC.com. worktrucksllc.com. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. All right. As we get to our last topic of the day, it's brought to you by Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Say Off the Hook sent you. Walk in and say, "Hey, Mo, Off the Hook sent you." QualityTirePros.com. Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports reports that the power conferences, SEC, ACC, Big 12, Big 10, not the NCAA, are set to control policing athlete compensation. A committee of power conference administrators took significant steps this week toward the creation of a new entity that will govern the evolving professionalized aspects of college sports, a milestone moment in the industry's history. During a two-day summit in Washington, D.C., there was a transition team charged with figuring out concepts of the health settlement, how to work within it with the NCAA NIL case, and figure out a way to establish a new structure to oversee, manage, and enforce the settlement related to athlete compensation system for all of NCAA Division I. This will be a newly created LLC overseen by CEO or executive director and is centered on a new enforcement arm to police violators of the industry's new salary cap and is expected to feature revenue sharing policies and a corresponding penalty structure for violators. Multiple sources with knowledge of the meetings and issues spoke to Yahoo under the condition of anonymity. Basically, it's a nameless society running and adjacent and intertwined with the SEC, not the SEC, the NCAA, working with them to oversee and police revenue sharing. The builders of the framework is made up of athletic directors from the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12. Here's what's effectively happening. These people are going to control the sources of revenue that goes to the players. They're going to work on revenue sharing and things like that. Now, the truth is, when you do revenue sharing with players, with the money coming in, you have to do a salary cap that the players get to collectively bargain. That's the negotiating tool. There are some major pitfalls to these issues. First off, Title IX's in play. At the end of the day, there's still the Title IX issue that they have to operate because the way schools work is football and basketball typically generates all the revenue, and that money's dispersed evenly across the sports programs and the academic programs to fund things. So they would have to spin football off from the schools at that point, and the schools would just be like branding rights for the football program. That's how this would work. How does the rest of the school finance its sports after that? That's an issue. I think they'll be able to figure out a way to work that out, though. But the other problem is this salary cap stuff. I'm going to tell you guys this up front. There's not, it doesn't apply to NIL, and it never will. No one can tell you how much money you can make on endorsements on the open market anymore. That's what the Supreme Court struck down, which set off the NIL rulings. This is about schools directly paying players. There's no way to get the parity you want with NIL. You're bringing in more parity by doing it with revenue sharing, and I'm all for that. But I talked about this the other day. You're a booster. Athletic directors are literally telling boosters right now, hey, don't spend that money on rebuilding, on building this new library. Spend it on buying a few more players. Give them random endorsement deals. That's how this is working now. So what happens? How does this all play out? How is the negotiating process working right now with revenue coming into the school? Here's all the streamlines that are happening. Schools have expenses. A new one of their expenses is going to be paying players. Paying players, building stadiums, upgrading stadiums, paying for uniforms, things, all of that nature. They do all that with the money that they generate independently from football attendance and things like that, but also as members of their conference with the TV revenue that comes in, unless you're Notre Dame and you get all the TV revenue yourself. They also do that with the help of boosters. The more money they have coming in, the more money boosters then have to pull out and start spending on players in NIL, which will still be a thing in recruiting. There's no stopping that. So schools with bigger boosters and schools bringing in more independent money are still always going to have an advantage, even if you do the revenue sharing model. So there's no way, even with this revenue sharing, to control the NIL. Because I'm just going to tell you guys right now. Ohio State just had a $20 million NIL budget. $20 million is about what schools are going to be able to get to pay players. Those NIL budgets are growing, man, because the more money schools bring in, particularly with these new contracts, and as bad as the SEC's is compared to the Big Ten, it's still a bigger TV contract than what they did sign. So with this more money coming in from the TV contracts, the boosters don't have to commit as much to donations to the school to pay for things. That means more money for them that they can spend on advertisements and endorsement deals for the players. And by the way, here's the other part. You talk about tax write-offs and things like that. I don't know the difference. Jimmy Hines was telling us that tax write-offs on endorsements for players are not the same as tax write-offs for, donating to the university. They can get around that. They could probably say this is a donation to the player. Now, there's the legal loophole of okay, you go to court. If you say it's a donation for the school, all of a sudden you're going something beyond NIL and you can't claim that. So it is a donation for the player. But guys, they're going to lobby Congress. I keep telling you guys this. The boosters are millionaires and billionaires. They own all of Congress anyway. They're going to lobby Congress and get the tax code changed to make sure that buying players gets in the same tax write-offs as as donating to a stadium does. You don't think they're going to do that? Okay? That's pretty much crazy. So there's a lot that's going to have to be worked out with this. But the truth of the matter is the Power Four conferences are about to figure out a salary cap and revenue sharing for the players, and unionizing is coming next, as Ross Dellinger is reporting. But I just want to point out that these changes that we're talking about are not that big of changes in college football. They're not going to make the impact that people think they're going to make. Real quick, the show is brought to you by Ted Russell Ford. Ted Russell Ford, Lincoln. We are live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio.
Well, Ted, looks like you're settling right into your new space.
Affirmative. Powered by the new Ford Lightning.
That would be incredible. For camping, tailgating, the options are unlimited. Why don't you take a little power for yourself, buddy?
Beep boop beep bop.
Get into this new 2024 Ford F-150 Power Boost for only $53,300, or get 0% for 72 months on a Ford F-150 Lightning. Come see us today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
All right. So sticking with this talk, Mark Carter has got a great point. Ohio State just lost $34 million, so the NIL will be outside the university funds. Yes, but the point I'm kind of making is that, and I think you agree with me, is that the money is going to, is the money to a certain degree is, yes, it's outside the university funds, But the university funds to do things are oftentimes supplemented by boosters donating to those things, whether it be stadium upgrades or, getting their name at Thompson Bowling Arena, stuff like that. Adam says you're against unionizing. You say unionizing is stupid. Look, Adam, they can't do a salary cap unless the players unionize. That's a blatant antitrust violation at that point. You can't limit what the players can make and what schools want to pay players unless you allow the players to collectively bargain and unionize. That's the only way that's going to work. So that's kind of the big thing. And Mark says, okay, public institutions will have to live on a balanced budget. Boosters will be outside the institution. Yes, I agree. That's where the TV revenue comes in. The TV revenue is going to help them do that. Now, Adam, you want to join a union for 5 years? If you're Arch Manning, you're not joining a union. So, okay, I get it. Yes, that's how unions work. Unions work where the most valuable players make less, so the players at the bottom can make more. That's how unions have always worked. That's how the players' unions in professional sports work. LeBron has always played for way less than his market value, so the players at the bottom can make way more. But there are certain benefits and things like that come with it. That's the idea. That's why, if you guys know history, I don't know if you know this, but the biggest reason wrestling doesn't have a union right now is because when Jesse Ventura tried to unionize wrestling in the 80s, Hulk Hogan snitched on him to Vince McMahon because Hulk Hogan was making more than all the other wrestlers combined, and that would have meant less money for Hulk Hogan. So I get your point, Adam, that it's a 5-year, like joining a union for 5 years makes a little bit like not a lot of sense. I'm wondering, though, if there's going to be certain insurance policies that come with the unions, such as if you get hurt. I mean, there already are insurance policies where if you get hurt and it hurts your NFL career, you can get paid out. There might be a lot more stipulations and a lot more benefits if the players do unionize. But legally, they will have to collectively bargain. So that's going to be kind of intriguing how that works out. Portions of the program brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. They want to be your jeweler. Looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition, rickterryjewelry.com. Also brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, daily updates, facebook.com/sportstreasurestn, facebook.com/sportstreasurestn. And brought to you finally by the UPS store, Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, a wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated, 10629 Hardin Valley Road. I want to thank you guys all for tuning in to the show today. This was a lot of fun. Again, keep Dave in your thoughts. Hopefully he will feel better and be ready to go on Monday. Again, we are broadcasting live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. The Dave Hooker Show is Off the Hook Sports is represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. With Off the Hook Sports, with Caleb Calhoun, this has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. You guys have a great weekend. Thank you.